infrastructure. Globally, PPPs, as an introduction, have provided governments under financial pressure with a tool to deliver infrastructure with private sector support. In the case of South Africa, the PPP model has been employed since 1980s. However, that said, the PPP uptake has declined over time, dropping from 10.7 billion in 2011-2012 to 7.1 billion in 2022-23. And this decline raises the urgent question, which this chapter seeks to answer, is how do we reignite infrastructure's role in growth while strengthening the role of PPPs in this regard? Some of the key findings, honourable members, our analysis found that PPPs are poorly defined in the legislation. Regulation 16 under the PFMA and MFMA doesn't clearly separate PPPs from traditional procurement. This result is that in many cases, government ends up holding more risk than the private sector. And the key takeaway on this slide is that unless PPP regulations are clarified and strengthened, private sector participation will remain limited and government will carry unsustainable risks. In terms of public infrastructure investment trends, between 2013 and 2023, provinces and municipalities contributed 1.1 trillion, about 50% of South Africa's total public infrastructure spend. This provides subnational governments, this proves, that subnational governments are not just implementers, but rather major drivers of infrastructure investment. However, PPPs accounted for only 50 billion or 2.2% of total public spending during this period. Over the 2024 MTEF, PPPs are projected to remain at just 2% of the pipeline, while provinces and municipalities will contribute 42%. So, honourable members, the key takeaway here is that there is scope for PPPs to be scaled up to bridge the funding gap. Then moving on to risks and the fiscal burden. Another challenge here lies in contingent liabilities and the burden of risk. National and provincial governments, as the main contracting parties, often carry the financial burden when governments default on PPP obligations. And this exposes the fiscus to high termination risks. Too often, PPPs resemble traditional procurement, where government retains most of the risk, while feasibility studies are weak or politically driven. From the case studies, the key lessons learned in respect of the domestic case studies include that competitive bidding is needed with clear risk allocations. There's a need for transparent communication and stakeholder buy-in to ensure PPP success. Realistic scope setting and financial discipline are also essential. The key takeaway here, honourable members, is the common lessons in the case studies are that clear regulations, strong institutional capacity, and innovative financing are all critical to scale up South Africa's PPPs. There are 3 recommendations emanating from this chapter. Firstly, in terms of prioritizing water and energy infrastructure, the Commission recommends that infrastructure development should prioritize sectors with the greatest impact on growth and sustainable development, and these specifically include water and energy. Secondly, on developing a new streamlined PPP framework, the Commission recommends that the Minister of Finance, together with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, replace the current fragmented PPP framework with a clear, unified framework that defines PPPs distinctly from traditional procurement and also clarifies the risk-sharing rules. Finally, honourable members, there's a need to adopt robust risk-sharing mechanisms and enforce contracts. And in respect of this, the Commission recommends to National Treasury and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. Here, we need to ensure that PPP's agreements have fair and enforceable risk allocations to protect both government and the private sector while reducing contingent liabilities. Moving on to Chapter 3 of the submission. This chapter focuses on strengthening subnational government's contribution to infrastructure-led growth in South Africa. By way of introduction, in acknowledging the significance of infrastructure investment to economic growth and its role in bringing forth wider developmental benefits like reducing inequality, alleviating poverty, and promoting environmental sustainability. So in this chapter, honourable members, the Commission conducted this research to examine whether infrastructure-led growth is indeed being realised, particularly at the subnational level of government. Now, in terms of the state of public infrastructure, the findings highlight that investment in terms of service delivery access, the results paint a mixed picture across the provinces. What is key to note here is that while public infrastructure investment has improved service delivery access, the progress of this remains uneven, where some provinces are advancing rapidly, while others continue to face structural challenges that require more targeted interventions. Moving to grant spending performance and specifically shifting the focus to the public transport network grant, the analysis here shows that the grant's allocation has fluctuated over the years before experiencing a significant decline in 2020-2021. So while spending performance has shown some improvements, it is still below full achievement. Still on this grant, honourable members, this consistently low spending performance is a clear indicator of ongoing challenges in terms of fund absorption and the efficiency of project implementation at the local government level. Overall, a substantial portion of the allocated funds are not being spent, which hinders the intended development of public transport infrastructure. Then moving on to grant performance in terms of the integrated urban development grant. Altogether here, the analysis shows significant gaps between allocated funds and the funds that are actually spent. The significant gap indicates major challenges in budget utilization, whereas the low spending performance suggests a persistent issue with the municipality's ability to absorb the allocated funds and officially implement urban development projects. Then, honourable members, on this slide are findings with regard to the subnational coordination in infrastructure delivery. This is a critical aspect for effective service delivery. First, here we note that South Africa has made some significant strides in improving infrastructure development coordination. However, despite these national efforts, the absence of a similar single window for infrastructure coordination at the subnational government level, specifically between provinces and municipalities, is a presiding concern given that these entities are directly responsible for most service delivery. In essence here, while national coordination is improving, the effectiveness of infrastructure development at the local level is hampered by a lack of cohesive, integrated planning and execution. Honourable members, from the findings, the Commission makes the following recommendations. As a means to a single window of coordination, the Minister of Finance, in collaboration with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, should seek to establish a subnational infrastructure coordination framework. This framework would be crucial as a step in streamlining infrastructure development at the provincial and municipal levels, and thereby reduce fragmented planning, duplicated errors, and inefficient resource allocation. To strengthen the link between infrastructure performance and funding allocation, the Minister of Finance should introduce a performance-linked feedback mechanism in all provinces and municipal incentive grants. Essentially, this mechanism would then create a direct and transparent link between province or municipalities' performance and the funding that they receive. This will then ensure that grants operate as true incentives rather than rewarding improved performance and encouraging and strengthening accountability. Moving on to Chapter 4, honourable members, which deals with an assessment of the performance of coalition-led municipalities. As a short introduction, we note that what has happened recently in the local government space is that there's been an increasing trajectory of coalition-led councils at the local government level. And given that this is becoming a more prominent feature and are increasing in local government, this research seeks to then assess the performance of coalition-led municipalities in terms of the provision of a specific basic service, and this is water. Firstly, to contextualize the increase in coalition-led municipalities, the number of municipalities with hung council, the study does reveal a significant increase in the number of municipalities with hung councils between 2006 and 2021. These findings indicate a continued decrease in the number of municipalities that are led by a majority party. The figure also shows that while the number of coalition-led municipalities increased over the period, over this same period, a significant increase occurred. A significant increase occurred between 2016 and 2021 local government elections, where the number of coalition-led municipalities increased from 27 to 67. To note that KwaZulu-Natal is the province with the highest increase in the number of coalition-led municipalities, which increased from 6 in 2016 to 19 in 2021. Moving on to some of the results, honourable members, as said earlier, with respect to the basic service of only water provision, not all basic services, the results suggest here that the municipalities with hung councils on average may perform better than municipalities with majority-led councils. However, honourable members, it is extremely important to reiterate that this finding is only in terms of a small sample of water service provider municipalities and in terms of that one service, and thus caution must be exercised when interpreting this result as this sample is limited. What is crucial to note, and what the findings also reveal, is that there's a substantially larger deviation from the average performance of hung councils compared to majority-led councils. Thus, the results from the analysis do capture the heightened risk of instability and potential poor performance in terms of service delivery in coalition-led governments, which we know is the case for many hung councils in South Africa. However, the study highlights some of the nuances here that need to be taken into account. In terms of audit outcomes, comparing audit outcomes for the two groups for the year 2022-23 and 2020-21, the results show the following. On regressed audit outcomes, 21% of municipalities under coalition-led councils have shown worsening audit outcomes compared to 14% in majority-led municipalities. With respect to the percentage of municipalities with unchanged audit outcomes, 72% of municipalities with majority-led councils did not improve compared to 61% of municipalities with hung councils. And then concerning improved audit outcomes, the results show a 17% improvement for the hung council group and 14% for municipalities with majority-led councils. The recommendation from this chapter, honourable member, there's one recommendation that that the Provincial Department of Cooperative Government and Traditional Affairs, as well as SALGA, the South African Local Government Association, identify key challenges and risks associated with hung councils, particularly in terms of the capabilities and performance of basic services. This is critical given an increasing trajectory of municipalities with hung councils and that the country is also heading into the 2026 local government elections next year. There's thus a high possibility that municipalities under hung councils might increase even further. This brings me to the final chapter, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members, on measuring fiscal pressures of urbanisation. By way of introduction, urbanization in the country has accelerated significantly, rising from 54% in 1994 to nearly 69% in 2023. This demographic shift places immense pressure on the metropolitan and secondary cities, which must then expand infrastructure and basic services at a pace that matches population growth. Now, given the increasing rate of urbanization and service delivery pressures in most urban municipalities, this study seeks to investigate the impact of urbanization on service delivery in order to understand how metropolitan and other urban centers are coping with expanding service delivery mandates that arise from urbanization. In terms of unemployment and population growth in metros, the results show that unlike Gauteng metros that struggle with migration-driven urbanization pressure, Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela Bay suffer from economic stagnation and not population surges. Both metros have shrinking shares of national population, but growing unemployment that signal weak economic resilience. In terms of access to electricity nationally, the number of households with access to electricity dropped by over 2 million, representing a 66% reduction. And this demonstrates the impact of targeted electrification programs, such as the Integrated National Electrification Program and Free Basic Electricity. In metropolitan municipalities, we find that the number of unconnected households declined by 43%, while in secondary cities achieved a 46% reduction. Notably, the largest improvement occurred outside of metros, where access gaps were reduced by 73%. So, honorable members, while these figures reflect success, they also highlight that over 1 million households, particularly, remain without electricity, and pointing to persistent service delivery gaps, especially in dense urban, but also in informal areas. Moving on further to households growth and informal settlements. Despite targeted programs like the Informal Settlements Upgrading Program, informal housing does remain a persistent issue. Nationally, households in informal dwellings increased by over 80,000 between 2001 and 2022. While metros saw slight improvements, informal settlements grew significantly in non-metro areas by 15%. So this trend is noticeable in big metros where informal settlements emerge faster than formal housing delivered. This disconnect between policy on the one hand and spatial realities on the other hand hampers service delivery and limits the effectiveness of municipal planning. Honourable members, final recommendations which emanate from Chapter 5. The Commission recommends 3 critical interventions. First, the Commission reiterates its recommendation from 2018-19 submission on the division of revenue that the Minister of Finance should create an awareness of the land value capture fiscal instruments amongst large cities and extend the scope of the financial management grant to cater for capacity building in the design as well as the implementation of land value capture mechanisms. Secondly, the Minister of Finance should prioritize the revision of the local government equitable share formula in order to account for urban growth and rising service costs. And finally, honourable members, municipalities should be capacitated to implement land value capture mechanisms and modernize revenue collection, particularly property tax structures through digital tools. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. With your permission, I'll hand over to my Chairperson of the FFC. Thank you.
The next slide, Gianni. So, honourable members, as we conclude our presentation, we would want the committee to continue to debate the Financial and Fiscal Commission's findings and interrogate those recommendations. I will also want to kindly request the committee to also facilitate joint sittings, perhaps, with the relevant committees that will engage the relevant executive to consider the recommendations of the Financial and Fiscal Commission. We'll also want to also recommend that the committee, if relevant, they can also use the recommendations of the Financial and Fiscal Commissions to engage National Treasury on any priority adjustments that the committee would want to see made on the budget proposals. And finally, committee members, chairpersons and members, we have also captured these recommendations in digestible policy briefs, which are available on our website. You can scan and download each of them. So these are easily available in bite sizes and written in very small. It's not too extensive, it's not detailed, but it's understandable. It's a policy brief. So these are available on our website. We can also make these available in hard copy if these are available. So with that, Chairperson, that concludes our recommendations, and we want to hand back to you for any deliberations and areas of clarity. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbava and the team. Colleagues, that's the presentation. And Dr. Safe to say that we are noting the specific recommendations which you make to the committee. The team, for the administrative team, the support team, and myself, not leaving the members of the committee out, we see on how best can we try to implement the recommendations which you specifically made for the committee. For example, having joint sittings with different committees to discuss your findings and the recommendations in as much as the budget. We are looking forward to starting the budget process. I would like to note hence members that would want to engage on the presentation. I see the hand of Honorable Siwisa, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Swart, Honorable Ndlovu, Honorable Hadebe. In that order, colleagues, Honorable Siwisa.
No, thank you, Chair, and greetings to Madam Mbava and her team, colleagues, support staff of the Appropriations Select Committee. Chair, I'm going to focus only on two chapters, which is chapter 2 and chapter 5. Mbava, I've always had a problem about this issue of PPP. And I think even in the 6th administration, I raised it many times in the Committee of Public Works and Infrastructure, because the PPP is of a great concern and has been continuous talks pertaining it, especially to deal with infrastructure. My greatest concern is that there might be an influence from the side of the investors, which might play a role in final decisions pertaining to procurement. Are there any specific reforms that the FFC can take us through to procure through the PFMA and MFMA? Risk sharing rules would make PPPs more attractive to investors, but safeguard the public purse. And with identifying the projects, again, on the issue of the PPPs, with identifying which projects will be private and which projects will be publicly financed, what criteria can be introduced to guard for a safe, suitable decision? Because now if we bring in the private companies to work with government, those are some of the issues that may come up to say who is doing what, which projects are going to be financed by the private, which ones. Is there a criteria that can be used for a suitable decision on that one? When we come to chapter 5, the urbanization, I think, Chair, we all know that urbanization is a big problem in South Africa. People are moving from rural areas to urban areas for the sole purpose of better services and access to services, especially your clinics, your hospitals, access to police services, your social development, employment opportunities. And it means that it's going to be a strain on that municipality, which is in the urban, especially your metro municipalities, and it's going to put a strain on the municipality itself, because now a budget has been put out to say this is what is allocated to this municipality because of the population, but every time the population goes up, because people go out and look for job opportunities or any other opportunity that is in the urban. So it means that it's going to be a strain on that. There is a lack of embarking on rural development, Chair, and support to other municipalities has been noted to be one of the major problems, because we speak about developing the rural areas. It's only talks, but there's nothing that's done. So which means that your urban areas are going to be flooded every time. The FFC is making recommendation that there needs to be a revised LGES. What concrete adjustment does the FFC propose that will reflect on population growth, unemployment, rising cost of basic services, Chair? Are there any recommendations based on the LGES that the FFC can advise on, so that when you also engage with the National Treasury, we'll be able to make that input to them? Because, Chair, we can never ignore the issue of lack of rural development, which is putting a burden on the urban areas of South Africa. And if we can't deal with the rural development and support the FFC on the revised LGES, then it means that we'll always have a problem in the urban areas. So what proposals does the FFC has when it comes to that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Ryder.
Morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much. Dr. Mbaba and your team, well done. Thank you as always for your great inputs. They help us tremendously in our annual program, and we really do appreciate the inputs. Having said that, I think you know I'm a fan of hard copies. And so your offer of providing us with a hard copy, I'd certainly like to take you up on that. I don't mind popping to your office to come and collect, or whatever arrangements can be made. I'd appreciate. Thank you very much. Chairperson, I think Honourable Siwisa has raised an important point, and the public-private partnerships have been flagged as a solution in many instances, or a proposed component of solutions to some of our issues that we are having. And I think that it's to be welcomed. And what we've seen over the past 2 years is an acknowledgement that the PPP conditions and requirements have been extremely onerous in the past, and there has been a move to simplify the process. Now, I mean, I'm familiar with a PPP that struggled to get off the ground for 12 years. When I say off the ground, I mean struggled to get Treasury and Treasury approval. Not necessarily the fault of Treasury, but there was just an extremely cumbersome process with tying up the PPP. And I know that there have been moves to simplify these regulations. I'd love to hear some inputs on that. I think Treasury has told us that they've made sweeping changes. I'd love to hear an independent view on the changes that have been made, and the potential that has to unlock the cooperation and the involvement of the private sector as well. Chairperson, the next thing I want to talk about briefly is just on the recommendations. I do think that our committee needs to protect our role as the NCOP and differentiate between the role of ourselves and the National Assembly's Standing Committee on Appropriations. So indeed, I do think that there is scope for us certainly to engage probably most strongly with the likes of COGTA together with the FFC, but I do think that some of those committees outlined would probably be best to be held as joint committees in the standing committee, joint meetings in the standing committee. That's just my suggestion. But yes, indeed, I think we saw yesterday there was a Home Affairs meeting with Appropriations Committee where the funding of the BMA was discussed at length, and I think that's very positive outcomes. But obviously, I'm speaking as an observer, an external observer of that committee. But I do think that there's huge potential to emanate out of committees being guided by some of the departments that are being funded. So, I mean, the one that springs to mind, of course, is the Defense Department. Again, not necessarily in the NCOP space, but you know, they are clearly underfunded. They have internal hassles, etc. And I think that an open discussion with Treasury, that department and the FFC would be great, but not necessarily for our committee, as I said. Chairperson, I do think that the inputs received today are important. I think we've been chasing after an infrastructure-led recovery for quite some time, and I mean that was part of President Ramaphosa's economic recovery and reconstruction program that dates all the way back to the COVID times, and we've seen it struggle to have traction. So I do think that this focus both on government's spending patterns as well as on getting the PPP started, I think is really important. I do appreciate the presentation. It was brief, so I don't think I've got enough information out of it. I think there's lots more reading to do, and but yes, we've got quite a lot of time ahead of the February budget, where we can apply our minds. Hopefully some of this data also influences our deliberations into the MTBPS, which always, of course, guides February. But thank you very much for the presentations. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Swart.
Hi, good day, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you very much. My video is not working on this laptop at the moment. So I just really want to keep it off. Chairperson, thank you very much. As Honorable Ryder said, I really appreciate it. It's a brilliant presentation, and I also would really like to have a hard copy on my table, because I think there's much to gain out of this, all the information that was shared. The one on as I said previously, I came out of the municipal area, and we were also part of a PPP in Cape Agulhas. And I think that is very important, and that is the way to go. And we are just worrying about the PPP activity that has declined very sharply over the past time. The second one for me, Honourable Chairperson, is on accountability. Our country has limited fiscal space. And the question on that is, how can we still leverage international climate finance effectively? And what oversight role should Parliament play to guarantee that accountability? The second one is climate shocks like droughts and floods hit certain provinces harder. And how should the division of revenue build resilience in vulnerable provinces without disadvantaging, the others? That is the second one. Urbanization, I think that one was covered. The other one was water, energy, and health give the highest growth returns, as listened to. But yet education infrastructure is critical for the long term of our country. How should allocations be balanced to achieve both immediate and future benefits? That is also very important for me. And the last one for me was your research showed that coalition municipalities sometimes achieve better water outcome, but have mixed audit results. I'm just wondering what lessons should Treasury and Parliament draw to guide support in politically unsustainable municipalities. I'm going to leave it there, Chairperson. I think there's also more hands up. Thank you very much for the presentation once again.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. Honorable Ndlovu.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to yourself and the team. Our colleagues, honorable members, Membava, and your team. And good morning. Chairperson, please allow me to raise my questions while my video is off, because I'm busy with other things and it will not reflect nicely then. Chairperson, will you allow me, with due respect?
Permitted, Honorable Ndlovu, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my first question is on the chapter 1. I think some of the questions have been raised correctly so, and the FFC knows strong independence between agriculture, transport, finance, and mineral sectors. What targeted regulatory reforms will safeguard this linkage, and how should National Treasury integrate such risks into its fiscal framework? Chair, if I go to chapter 2, the South Africa has seen a decline in PPP activity over the past decade. What specific reforms to procurement, the PFMA, MFMA, and risk-sharing rules will make the PPPs more attractive to investors while safeguarding the public purse? Chair, if I will continue on the chapter 3 on the subnational governance and infrastructure-led growth. The FFC notes weaknesses in incentive-linked grants where funding continues despite more performance. How should performance benchmark be tightened to ensure that only well-performing provinces and municipalities benefit? On the coalition-led municipalities, Chairperson, this one I'm also having more interest on that, because my municipality where I come from is also it's a hung municipality. The coalition government are expected to increase after 2026. What capacity building and governance reforms should be prioritized now to ensure service delivery stability in municipalities with hung councils? Chairperson, on the urbanization pressures, urbanization leads to rising demands for free basic services, putting strains in municipal budget. How should government balance the social contract of free basic services with the need for financial sustainability and ensure viability? My apologies, Chair. I think that the Public Works is busy at the back and they are disturbing me. Chair, and lastly, I'll agree with the recommendation of the FFC on the issue of having the joint sitting with the department, because it's very much key. At some instance, you'll find that you are discussing issues that you will need either the executive to respond. Also, that the same thing is discussed also on the select committee of, let's say, the COGSTA or the the fisheries and trade. So I think that the recommendations of FFC of saying let there be a joint sitting be also taken into consideration, because I think it's also one of the issue when during our workshop whereby Mr. Dlomo was able to advise. But my worry also on that, Chair, is yes, we can have a joint sitting amongst ourselves as select committees, but we also have a way, we need to have a way also with the standing committees there, because remember, at some instance, there will be a way of collaboration on how best can we deal with these issues, whereby if we deal with it in this fashion in the NCOP, and then we find that the portfolio at the National Assembly, the portfolio committee is dealing it in the different manner. It might even cause a serious problem. So I think we should also try to look at another way also of this joint sitting, including even the National Assembly committee portfolio committees. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlovu. Honorable Khadebe.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the committee. I'd really like to join my colleagues in appreciating the input from the Fiscal Commission. I think that it deals with the issues direct as they affect our various provinces and our communities. But what I would like to ask, I'm interested in this issue of unemployment, because as we know that in the country, we're a trajectory where there's a rise in unemployment. Actually, we are in the process of job shedding. I see that when coming to the metro of Johannesburg and Cape Town, they are able to absorb more they're able to create more employment for the incoming immigrants who are coming into the cities. But the cities like Mangaung and Buffalo, they're not doing that. What's the difference between these four cities? What is it which job is doing right and Cape Town City is doing right? What the Buffalo City and Mangaung is not doing right? Because if we're going to have a sprawling urbanization in these cities without the provision of jobs, it means that the likelihood of the creation of informal settlement is going to increase. Also, the unemployment is also going to lead to the increase in crime. So the Fiscal Commission go and find the underlying causes around that. Also, I'm also interested in the issue of one of the things which provide for job creation is the issue of the road infrastructure grant. Because through the proper roads, we're able to move the goods between the cities and the towns, between the farms and the markets. So with this issue of the infrastructure grant, which has been declining from 6 billion to about 4.4, what did the Fiscal Commission do some sort of work? What impact does that have? Because when we had the questions yesterday in the NCOP, in particular or with the Minister of Agriculture, was very clear that the issue of the roads are affecting the cost of doing business for the farmers. So what does the FFC recommend in particular on that grant? On the issue of the unemployment statistics, we know very well that the CEO of Capitec has disputed the figures which were provided by Statistics South Africa. It was very clear that it does not capture the essence of what is happening in the job market of South Africa, because there are a lot of people who are doing informal trading, which in other countries is taken as work. What is the take of the Fiscal Commission on that dispute? Because I've seen also the Department of Trade and Industry is also tilting towards the acceptance was the CEO of Capitec has said that if the job unemployment rates which are being projected here is impossible, we have had a revolution long time ago. So what is your take as the Fiscal Commission in doing that? And then also really appreciate the issue of the public-private. But something which is also not highlighted here is the issue of the public-public partnership. When I refer to the public-public partnership, I'll make an example between the partnership between SANRAL and various municipalities and various provincial governments, whereby SANRAL comes in and do the job and do the maintenance job and then get the grant from the whatever grant which is distributed to the provinces or to municipalities. It lays out to do some sort of research. What impact is that public-public partnership? Because we cannot only emphasize public-private. There are public-public land or partnerships which are there, which I think from where I'm seated, it looks like they're working. Because when you go to the provinces where SANRAL has got in, you can see the vast improvement on the issue of the roads or of the infrastructure concern. I don't know whether the Fiscal Commission has done that. The final one, not the least, this issue of the population growth in the various provinces. Did you do an analysis? What impact does it have when the population grows? Yeah, and the support from the side of the treasury in the distribution of financial resources. But also, did you do some sort of a study of the illegal immigrants? What impact does their presence have in the rolling out of the services for the various committees? Because you can see that it's like becoming a ticking time bomb. I think that as this committee of Select Committee of Appropriation, it must be able to build in particular for those provinces which are aligned to countries like Mozambique, Swaziland, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, so that what provision is going to be made for them to absorb the extra people. Because once people are inside the country, they are expected to get the services. But I'll also agree with the issue of the access to electricity. Yes, since 2001 up to now, the access of electricity has widened in all the communities actually across the country. I think that's the take which we as South Africa can be able to be proud of, that we took the access from the low rate. Right now, the access is very wide. But what is worrying me is the issue of water and sanitation. I see that you didn't emphasize the issue of water and sanitation. We know very well that without the provision of water and sanitation, the economic growth is not going to be high, because without water there are no factories. You cannot work around that. Without a reliable supply of water and sanitation, there are problems. I don't know what made the fiscal only to focus on the departments in the departments which they highlighted and left out that one of critical infrastructure like water and sanitation. We know very well that the province like Gauteng is facing serious challenges around the issue of water. So if our economic hub, not of South Africa, of Africa, has got the challenges of water, I think that is something we must need a focus around that, so that we can ensure that we stimulate the growth of the economy and ensure that our citizens are happy. By and large, thank you, Dr. with the team.
Honorable Khadebe, Honorable Mumalo.
Thank you very much, Chair, and my humble greetings to your good self and all the members of the committee. Let me start by acknowledging the presentation from Ms. Mbava and her team. Really, it's more understandable. It assists us to make sure that we are well informed and we'll be able to take decisions based on the information given to us and also the recommendation. Chairperson, with your permission, I don't want to open my video. There are people who are working outside, so there's a lot of noise where I am. It can interrupt my conversation. Chairperson, with your due respect, allow me to talk while my video is off. I hope.
Proceed, Honorable Mumalo.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think my first matter is on the issue of infrastructure and public-private partnership, which is a triple P. Chairperson, I want to concur with the recommendation by the FFC, which says that there must be a coordination framework in national and provincial to avoid duplication. Chairperson, in most cases where we do oversight, you could see that there's a project that is from the national and then the province know little about that project, and whereas it is in the municipality. So the coordination there is still a matter that needs to be discussed further so that we can have a signage in terms of the three spheres of government, because in all the way they have to deliver service to the very same people in that local municipality. Chairperson, my question, because it's on the infrastructure and PPE, given the fiscal constraint, how should government decide which projects are best suited for triple P financing versus the traditional public funding? And what criteria should guide this decision, Chairperson? The other one, Chair, it's on the issue of the coalition-led municipality. Chairperson, coalition government are expected to increase after 2026 local government election. What capacity building and government reform should be prioritized now to ensure service delivery stability in municipality with the hang councillors or council? Because we are seeing this increase, but they need to be capacitated before they can get into this hang council. Chairperson, my last one is on urbanization pressures, which is true that we see most of our people are moving from the rural areas to the urban. And my question is, urbanization lead to rising demand for free basic services, putting strain on municipal budget. How should government balance the social contract of free basic services with the need for financial sustainability and to show viability of those municipalities? Because really it is a strain. You are budgeting for 400 people or for 4,000 people. All of a sudden, you're supposed to make sure that you deliver service to 9,000 people. So always people will be like saying, we don't get the service, not looking at the budget, because budget is vis-a-vis the population. So, Chairperson, I think this is that. But I want to welcome the presentation from FFS. It really assists us as we move forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngumalo and Dr. Mbava. All members are appreciating and dearly welcoming the presentation. But as we respond to all the issues around the public-private partnership, I would like for you to please provide more details on your suggestion to creating a framework to replace the current fragmented approach. I would like for you maybe to tell us what it would entail and how it would improve the current system. And on the presentation, it's highlighted that there's a lack of sub-national coordination in infrastructure development. My interest would be how would the proposed framework address this issue and what benefits can we expect from its implementation? My last one is that your submission finds that there is no significant difference in the performance between the coalition-led and majority-led municipalities. Can I just have your take on what implications does this have for our assessment on municipal performance, and how can we really support these municipalities in improving their performance? Thank you very much. Over to you, Doctor, and the team.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Let me appreciate the questions from all the members. Chairperson, questions from, comments rather from Member Ryder and Swart. We will definitely make the copies available, the hard copies available. Let me also, through you, Chairperson, just ask the technical teams to come in, led by Chen. If you can just lead the technical analysis, please. Thanks so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable chair members. I'm going to hand over to Jenny to answer the questions. It's safe to say that I think on the issue of PPP and framework is that it wasn't and through our research, the main critique or the findings on it is the issue of ambiguity. And I'm sure, as honourable members has also noted, is that they have in various aspects, from a practical point or from a theoretical point of view, have struggled with this PPP framework. And given that reality, from our analysis, we're essentially noting that the origin, the root cause for the struggle is that the PPP framework currently, as it stands, is somewhere slotted underneath the supply chain management or public procurement legislation, as well as its regulatory framework of number 16 from Treasury. And notwithstanding that is, as we in our research found, that it's reporting. So of course, this PPP framework being such a tremendous project and a policy position to have been taken by government, it's the question of monitoring and evaluation is a useful or necessary tool of gauging the correctiveness and also the effectiveness and efficiency of this PPP framework. That we found it to be just non-specific. Currently, the contingent liabilities is being included into the PPP framework. Government guarantees is being included into the PPP framework. It's somewhere mixed up, and we don't know. It's impossible to know how much is paid for or responsible by the government, some part of it, how much is responsible or work to be done by the private sector. And that is the ultimate, the conclusion of our findings in the deficiency of the current PPP framework. In our recommendation then, what we're saying is that we need to separate this PPP framework and approach from this pool of supply chain and public procurement swamp, and that it needs to be done on the basis of contract and transparency agreements between governments and the private sector. It can't just be slotted underneath somewhere in terms of whether it be PFMA or the supply chain management or somewhere regulations or the Public Procurement Act. So we need to first have a separate framework, policy framework, and therefore becoming a legislative framework for PPP to guide and to control this framework of partnership. Not just that, as I said, the important part about it is the contract negotiations. Who is responsible for what in this PPP framework? It cannot just be that it's a project, as or currently the framework is in absence, and it's somewhere saying that government will pay some part, private sector will pay some part. All those ambiguities needs to be cleared out. And I definitely take to heart what the honourable members have said regarding the issue of employment and unemployment. My concern there, from a technical point of view, just want to speak on that point, is the fact that employers have from their perspective, the employer's employment figures. And in fact, at Stats SA, there is an employment sort of labor force survey conducted on the employers, asking them what are their employment numbers from the business perspective, if you like. But there is also, of course, the labor force from the shall we say, the laborers or the employees' perspective surveys. These two survey types are distinct. But what it's ultimately also saying is that they don't often agree, and for easy reasons, right? So it's because that from the employer perspective, they have their HR systems, they have their employment figures, and their perceptions are driven by their business confidence and so forth, informing that decision of and the numbers they report to Status. But then there is also in their systems, but in reality, from a household perspective, I mean the employees' perspective of the labor force surveys, it's a different thing to define or understand that perspective of employment. In other words, are you earning any proper income? And is there a proof of that? And then also, where do you regard yourself in terms of the sector? I saw the point, note the point from Capiteccio is that he's arguing that informal sector is a big sector now in South Africa, which we need to stand corrected and verify that facts in terms of statistics, which we don't see at the moment. South Africa's informal sector, it's in the word, it's informal, and therefore, if we cannot measure it, we can't be certain of its existence or its magnitude. Perhaps the CEO has got other data sources that they would like to share, then of course it would be a different story. But until it is verified and proven to be a reality of the South African economy and the labor force and the realities of faced by the households, I think our triple challenges and the main challenge being that of unemployment, therefore poverty and inequality, is still very high and significant. Thank you, Chair. Let me, through you, hand over to Jenny to answer the other technical questions on this submission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the Head of Research, and thank you very much, honourable members, for engaging with the recommendations by the FFC. To add to the public procurement, apologies, the PPP questions, and to add on what our Head of Research has said, there were many queries about that. The one about whether there's a list of criteria used to determine which projects to finance as PPPs. So in South Africa, National Treasury does have a clear set of criteria that all PPP projects must meet before they can be approved and financed. And in this respect, Treasury applies 3 core tests. First, the project must demonstrate value for money, meaning it provides better long-term benefits than if government delivered it directly. Secondly, it must be affordable with all financial commitments fitting within the state's budget and fiscal framework. And third, it must also achieve appropriate risk transfer. International best practice in this regard confirms this approach, emphasizing the same principles of value for money, affordability, and risk allocation, as has been said earlier, but also highlights the importance of transparent and competitive procurement, proper project preparation, alignment with government priorities, and a strong monitoring of fiscal commitments and contract management and contract performance. Further to the PPPs, members asked what moves have been made to unlock PPPs and make them more attractive to investors. So a bit of background here, the amendments to the National Treasury Regulation 16, which has been effective 1 July 2025, aim to streamline and strengthen South Africa's PPP framework. And here, in this regard, the key changes include exempting smaller projects, which is 2 billion rand or less, from approvals double IA and double IB. Exemption from approvals from these mean that PPP projects below this threshold of 2 billion, the government institutions no longer need Treasury's separate approval of procurement documents or the appointment of a preferred bidder. So this can shorten the process to just feasibility and final contract approval. However, Procurement documents must still be reviewed by the Government Technical Advisory Center, GTAC, PPP advisory units. So the reform also clarifies the advisory unit support role. Clearly, separate advisory and regulation functions allow national departments to establish sector-specific PPP units. However, as has been raised by the head of research, the Commission notes these amendments also raise several critical concerns regarding the process, oversight, accountability, and essentially to make PPPs more attractive, further reform should focus on how to streamline these decision-making across the three spheres of government, to ensure that negotiations can be closed, standardized in terms of contracts, to reduce transaction costs, and also to enhance transparency and accountability. And then this will also build investor confidence and strengthen government's capacity. So the brief question on highlights by Honorable Radebe on how on public-private partnerships and if they can work. So in South Africa, PPPs have shown that collaboration between public entities can work, but in the instance where there's clear governance, there's adequate resources and aligned mandates. So too often they have struggled due to overlapping responsibilities, the financial weakness of one performance or weak accountability mechanisms. By contrast, what the Commission has found is that the most successful large-scale infrastructure delivery in South Africa has tended to rely on PPPs rather than on public-private partnerships rather than public-public partnerships, as these bring in capital and expertise that are not necessarily available within the public sector. And then just a final note on the PPPs. What should be the approach to create this unified framework? So the research did identify that bureaucratic inefficiencies is a significant deterrent to PPP implementation for infrastructure delivery. Currently, the regulations are spread, as has been alluded to again by my head of research, that the regulations are convoluted. There's a framework of instruments that are not necessarily aligned with one another, the PFMA, the Public Procurement Act, Supply Chain Prescripts, the MFMA, and all of these lead to confusion. So this is the core of where we start to create a unified framework. The approach to this framework should include provisions that enable private partners to directly engage municipal councils through feasibility studies and bids for public infrastructure projects. Municipal councils would then also retain final decision-making authority. The Minister of Finance in this regard would provide an advisory guidance on the financial implications of private sector proposals. So honourable members, I hope that covers some of the questions around the PPPs. Just to touch on Honourable Swart's question about the mobilizing of international climate change funding in the context of South Africa's poor growth and the heavy fiscal constraints. So in terms of the research and what the research showed beyond what was presented today, honourable members, is firstly, the policy framework needs to be strengthened. So these are building blocks that the research indicates can be important in order to mobilize this funding. The policy framework needs to be strengthened to show that we have the strong institutional support available and effective mechanisms to enhance implementation of the climate targets that the country has adopted. So we saw that the country has adopted quite progressive, or has progressed quite extensively in terms of its climate change policy framework. However, some policies are not necessarily, while they can be, while they are sound in what they're trying to achieve, they are not being effectively measured. And and targets aren't being implemented, and we're not seeing these measurable outcomes. And then that, of course, impacts the effective implementation. So while there's been these key policies over the years, including even, as we know, the Climate Change Act, we need clear measurable targets to show that we are capable of utilizing funding effectively and spending effectively. The other key aspect, which also speaks to this question, is that to mitigate against the consequences of climate change on the economy, we need to increase the fiscal credibility and restore fiscal credibility in South Africa. So this is also key because we found that the impact of climate change on the fiscus and the economy at large, it will deteriorate the fiscus, or there's evidence that it can deteriorate the fiscus further. And obviously, as our honourable member has mentioned, we are in a worrying fiscal position. So the FFC here emphasizes that through productive spending mechanisms, we need to foster this fiscal credibility, and this could be a further avenue of incentivizing and mobilizing international funding for climate change. And finally, on this, honourable member, one of the key findings that emanated from the study is also that the regional and country level impact of climate change is not directly proportional to what these regions and countries emit in terms of carbon emissions. So there is an undermining of the principle of fairness there, which is spoken to, that's the underlying rationale in that first recommendation. So based on this, the Commission is essentially advocating for a more proportional and fair funding redistribution with the aid of international role players who are in a better position to assist countries that are not contributing globally a large share to emissions and climate change at all. But in addition to strengthening the fiscal position and the policy environment to be strategic, this may be mechanisms to incentivize funding from the international role players. Honourable members, in terms of capacity building to ensure service delivery in hung councils, the Commission's research findings here highlight uncertainty and risk in these municipalities with hung councils. However, we do note that the Commission's research did not go as far as identifying in this study the reasons behind this high level of uncertainty and disparity in the results that we see in terms of why some are performing worse than others. So whether capacity constraints contribute to this uncertainty or other issues in such a governance structure are the main causes, the Commission at this point cannot say if that is the case or not. It could be a contributing factor. We do note that with the assistance of SALGA and the Department of Cooperative Governance, if these root causes can be identified, such risk that specific intervention then could be recommended through further evidence-based research that we can conduct on this. Honourable members, to touch on some of the other questions, how should allocations be balanced to ensure that education infrastructure achieves long-term economic growth? The negative contribution that we found of education infrastructure and economic growth, this is not only due to funding challenges. The research showed that the analysis essentially, it raises the alarming inefficiencies that are present within the education sector. And this is really the challenge that we found here in terms of education infrastructure and its impact on economic growth. And then How should performance of incentive grants be strengthened? To strengthen incentive grant performance, we need to establish clear objectives and realistic goals. So here we need to ensure that grants are fairly distributed, that are based on their contribution, and provide frequent feedback and communication to maintain this motivation and incentive. So in terms of this, regular review and adapt the incentive program based on performance data. This can be done to ensure that it remains a true reflection of the effort and results. And then this, honourable members, ties back to the recommendation of a feedback loop that links performance in respect of grant outputs to receipt of funds, and especially the incentive-related funds. Finally, some final notes, honourable members, on the issue of on Chapter 5, on the issue of balancing funding with the need of rising population. Government should take the funding system as dynamic as the population it serves. So what this means is updating the local government equitable share for urbanization pressures and giving municipalities tools to grow their own revenue. And that is critical. This is what we are recommending in this submission, that municipal councils should introduce innovative ways for their municipalities to generate revenue and to strengthen their revenue-generating mechanisms, and that this can be done through the modernization of the property tax collection system, through digital valuation systems, to improve efficiency and automated billing systems. And then maybe a final contribution on the issue of unemployment. Big metros are able to create more employment, whereas others like Manguang are not matching the employment with rising population. Here, honourable member, big metros succeed because they have these diverse, stronger infrastructure and deeper fiscal capacity to attract investments, take out debt, and jobs. So smaller cities, on the other hand, like Mangaung, struggle because they lack this diversity and rely heavily on budget allocations. Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, I hope I've touched on most of the questions, and I'll hand back over to my chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the research for that analysis. Chairperson and members, I think that covers our submission to the committee. And if there's anything else that we have left out or further questions, we can also submit those in writing. I want to hand over back to you, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbava. Honorable members, do you have any follow-up, or you feel as if you were sufficiently and comprehensively responded to? If you have a follow-up or your question was not responded to, kindly raise your hand. I will give you an opportunity. There's no indication from members. Honorable Ndlovu.
Thanks, Chair. I only have one question, ma'am, on this presentation. You know, it's something that is stressing me on the presentation, that there could be an increase of hung municipalities in 2026. Maybe Chairperson Mbava can just indicate to us as this committee, so what informed that research, or where does that thing come from? And yeah, that is something that is now disturbing me, to say, how can we say that? Is it not our intention to reduce it? Or is there any research that shows that indeed there will be more hung municipalities in 2026? Thanks.
Dr. Mbava.
Thank you so much, Chair. Can research explain as informed by our research findings, if that is indeed the case?
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. Permit me, if you will, to be blunt. The fact that the citizenry and also the electorate are opting for hung councils itself is not the root cause of the issue. As Honourable Member, you correctly asked, how do you reduce it? It's through service delivery of basic services. In this case, in our research, it's water. You can't tell, we can't tell, nobody can or should in a democratic environment to not go vote for whoever they decide to vote for. The best way to convince them to stay with any majority is, or government for that matter, is that government delivers basic services. In our analysis, and by the way, we did conduct this empirically based on evidence and based on empirical data that is the results of the 2016 election before and after. So in other words, we compared all the municipalities in terms of their basic services delivery before and after. And one notices that before the election that the council were in majority party led, when their service delivery is low, people opted for taking on the risk with the hung councils. And that's why the proliferation or the increase in the hung councils. So the best way to sum it up, to put it simply, to reduce the number of hung councils or to convince the electorate, the citizenry and the voters, easiest way is to make sure that they get their access to basic services, water, electricity, refuse, sanitation, Honourable Member that earlier also mentioned, because those are the basic human rights. And for those matters, without these, the economy cannot grow, people will not flourish, household will struggle. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I think we have covered all the questions, so I want to hand over back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think most of the questions, if not all questions, were responded to, but I see Honorable Masia has raised a question on the chat. I'm going to allow her this opportunity. She's a chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Finance from Gauteng, maybe to personally ask her question. Honorable Masia. Honorable Masia. No, it's okay if she's not in the platform. Colleagues, let me take this opportunity and thank FFC and the team for being part of our meetings. And as always, your insight really assists us in doing oversight and do our day-to-day work as the select committee. I'll now request that you excuse us in the meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Members of the committee, kindly remain for us to process the minutes of previous meetings. Thank you very much, Dr. and the team. Mr. Nodada. Kindly take members through the minutes of the previous meeting.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, is my screen
yes, it's visible.
Visible. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, Chairperson and honorable members. On the screen is the set of minutes dated 29 July 2025 for your consideration. On the day, the committee considered two draft reports, firstly on appropriation bill, and the second one on ESCOM debt relief amendment bill. This is page 1, honorable members. Attendance register. Page 2, attendance register still. Page 3, the introduction. Second section is consideration of the ESCOM debt relief amendment bill. The report was moved by Honorable Ndlovu and seconded by Mr. Khadebe. Section 3 is consideration of appropriation bill. Page 4 still covers the deliberations when the committee was considering the appropriation bill report. This is page 5, honorable members. The report was moved by Honorable Ndlovu and seconded by Honorable Nimalo. The committee on that day also considered draft minutes dated 16 July 2025. Those minutes were adopted by the committee. Honorable Swart moved and Honorable Nimalo seconded. The closing remarks and the meeting adjourned at 10:59. Thank you, Chairperson. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nodada. Colleagues, can I get an indication whether this is a true reflection of the engagements that took place in the meeting, Honorable Ndlovu?
Thanks, Chair, and again, a good morning to honorable members and the staff. I move for the adoption of the minutes. Thank you.
Honorable Ndlovu moves. Can I get a mover, a seconder? Honorable Nimalo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I second the move by Honorable Ndlovu. Thank you.
Honorable Nimalo seconded. The minutes are duly adopted. Any other set of meetings from the third, maybe on Mr. Nodada, or you do not have this set of meetings for the third?
No, Chairperson, we did not. This is the only outstanding set of minutes, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought maybe we'll have a short meeting
For the workshop.
Yeah, for recording purposes, but if you do not have them before us, it's still fine. Honorable
Yes.
members, let me take this opportunity to thank all of you for availing yourself. We know we nearly convenienced you in terms of the starting time of the meeting. We previously agreed that all virtual meetings will start at 9. Physical meetings will always start at 10 to award members an opportune time to prepare themselves, as they will take a 12:30 bus to the sitting. Colleagues, this was a very fruitful meeting, and thank you very much for the indulgence and the conversations which members had with FFC. It really assists in opening an eye for most of the members and all of us in doing our oversight. And as we prepare ourselves for the forthcoming budget process. The support staff of the committee, thank you very much for the work that you do behind doors to assist members of this committee. This brings us to the end of our meeting, colleagues. Thank you very much. We'll meet in the house at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Chair. Well done.
Thank you, Chair.